Hi everyone, my name's Ercy and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on The Push, so stay tuned. Once again, it's been a little bit since I've posted a video, but that's okay because, you know, life happens, so whatever. But I am here to give you my thoughts on The Push. This book is by Ashley Audrain. I have a lot of thoughts on this book. I really enjoyed this book, and so I'm just going to give you a rundown of why I picked up this book, what it's about, a couple of the themes that it covers, why I kind of personally related to this a lot, and just how freaking crazy this book is and how much I enjoyed it. So if that is something you want to hear, then I hope you guys stick around throughout this video. But let's go on with my thoughts. So let's first start off with why I picked up this book. So I wound up hearing about this book from Fine over on Fine Reads. She talked about this book on her channel, and it was always on the back of my mind to actually pick this book up. I think it was even featured on like the book club for like Good Morning America. And it was just one of those books that I always really like thought about and just never picked up. But I saw that my library had the audiobook for this and decided this is the perfect opportunity to give it a listen, and that is exactly what I did, and I do not regret that choice because I really enjoyed this book. So thank you, Fine, for this great recommendation, because this book was wild. So what is this book even about? So this is listed as a psychological drama, and I 100% agree with that description of this book. I feel like a short way of describing this book would be a great cross between the movie The Orphan, which is, you know, about that little girl that like, just look up The Orphan. It's such a crazy movie. So yeah, I would say it's like a cross with The Orphan with a really good look at postpartum depression, motherhood, trauma, so many things. I'm gonna give you a brief rundown on what it says on Goodreads. So if I'm looking down, I'm just reading from my computer. Blythe Connor is determined that she will be the warm, comforting mother to her new baby, Violet, that she herself never had. But in the thick of motherhood's exhausting early days, Blythe becomes convinced that something is wrong with her daughter. She doesn't behave like most children do. Or is it all in Blythe's head? This book was crazy. This book was crazy. So let's talk about some of the themes since you got a rundown of the synopsis. So definitely motherhood, grief, postpartum depression, trauma, marriage, the effects and consequences of gaslighting. I feel like those were the major themes that I picked up on this book, especially the ones on like motherhood and like the gaslighting and stuff. Grief was prevalent throughout this book. But let's talk about it just a little bit more. So when it comes to the theme of motherhood, in all the pressures and expectations placed on mothers, with this book, I honestly felt heard, because there's just so much pressure that mothers have to go through. Like, I only have one kid, you know, and it's not that crazy. You know, like, I love my daughter. She's one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life, but it's not easy, especially when there's this pressure to be this picture perfect mother that everyone kind of expects you to be, you know, especially with like older people and like in your lives and stuff, kind of critiquing the things that you do or how things are done in your way. It's just real interesting that we know that there's this pressure on mothers, and yet we are constantly bombarded with these expectations of what motherhood should be. So it's just real interesting to kind of see that written out in this book in this way. I mean, to a more extreme, this is definitely a more extreme example, but I feel like there was so much in here that I definitely related to. Especially when it comes to like finding your identity while also being a mother. Like, so much of you gets lost in being like a mom. And I'm sure it's the same thing with like fathers too, but I feel like with mothers it's something else, especially when you're carrying the baby and your body changes. You're sort of expected to have this blissful experience, but you know, you're sore, you're tired, you don't feel like dressing up all the time. You don't feel like putting on your makeup and doing your hair. Sometimes you forget to shower or even eat because, you know, especially in the early days of like being a new mom and adjusting to like the changes of your body, and your life, really, like so much of you gets lost in the nurturing and caring of another human being, and it can be really rough and it can be really hard, especially when that postpartum depression like hits. I feel like if you don't have a good support system, which I feel like this character Blythe definitely did not have, you can really get lost in the throes of depression like we saw in this book. Especially with her husband. Oh, he was so infuriating. He was so frustrating as a character because it is just this classic example of a husband having these sort of expectations of what you should be and how you should feel, and not listening and you know, thinking that you're crazy for feeling the things that you do. I'm not projecting. I'm just I'm just feeling what this character was feeling, right? But it was just like, I felt for her so much because like, while some of what she did, obviously, like the disconnect that she had with her daughter was definitely something I did not have with mine. I mean, like I was definitely very much in love and connected with my daughter. That is not something that this character experienced. And so she's been actively trying to fight for it. And it's really hard when you have a husband that's not being the best support system. It's what I'll say, because he was so frustrating. And even with like other women too, you know, you go to these mommy groups, these support groups that you're supposed to go to like, you know, have this sort of camaraderie, and then at the end of the day you realize a lot of the conversation, to put it quite frankly, is just bullshit. Like, you know, oh my god, everything is so beautiful and romantic and blah blah blah, like with your kid, but oh, let's talk about like not being able to sleep for about 4 months, you know. Let's talk about, you know, your body not reacting or looking the same way like it used to, and you can't bounce back as quickly as some of these people that are, you know, that have like money to like afford trainers and chefs and all this other stuff, you know. And then it's just frustrating when you want to have these real conversations with people and then they're lost in their own imagination of what it should be and what it should look like, and therefore ignoring all of the negative that can come with it. And it's not to say like we should all be consumed with the negativity of what it really is to be a new mom, or like a new parent, I should say. You just want to be able to have a fair conversation where there's both sides to it, where you can have these wonderful, beautiful moments with your kids, but also having those infuriating moments of, you know, not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, not taking care of yourself because of how you're feeling in those moments of adjusting to a new lifestyle. I really felt like the character in this book really embodied that a lot. And it was just sad to see that there was no support for her and there was no believing her and what she was going through. Let's also talk about the gaslighting in this book that I touched on it a little bit with the husband not being a great support system for our main character, but there were many moments in here where our main character was actively trying to seek help or seek some sort of understanding, have some sort of conversation, only to be told that she's imagining things and something's wrong with her, and instead of actually looking at what it is that's going on and maybe trying to find solutions to those things, and instead to be met with being perceived as crazy and being perceived as, not caring or not loving, when something might actually be wrong. Like why was it so hard to believe some of the things that was going on, the feelings that she had? Like she literally was so unheard in this book. And I feel like that is something that people can experience definitely in the throes of parenthood, right? Or even in a relationship. Or sort of this idea that the feelings that you have are invalid, or like you shouldn't be feeling that way. There was just so much of it, and it was so frustrating for this character. I was frustrated for her, especially like with her husband. Oh my god, he was so frustrating. I know I keep saying it over and over again, but like literally this is like the perfect example of like the parent that is outside of the home, not truly understanding everything that's going on in the home, because they're not there, and they have this fantasy expectation of what things should be like at the home, and then to hear otherwise, and not believing it. I feel like that was definitely portrayed very well in this book. Now, I want to touch on this real quickly as far as like the connection that our main character had with her children, or I should say the disconnect that she had with her children. That is something I really could not relate to, but I can understand, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it was written in a way where I can see where the parent was coming from, especially given like her past and everything, and like the disconnect that she had with her daughter. I can understand why she was feeling the way that she was, especially with what the kid was doing, but that's definitely not something I could relate to, especially given how close I am with my own daughter. And lastly, when it comes to the themes, I want to talk about grief and how it was portrayed in this book. I really feel like the author did a really great job of describing how one can really lose themselves to grief and mourning. And our main character, she kind of went through a lot as far as like with motherhood, but then when this thing happens to her and she's going through grief, I feel like I felt those feelings with her, and I could totally understand why things fell apart the way that they did because of what she was going through. And I feel like it was really well done and portrayed, and I really felt for this character a lot, especially during those moments. And the way that she was acting was totally understandable because of what she was feeling and what she was going through. So I feel like this was a really great representation of that and those feelings. I really felt what she was feeling without having gone through that myself, if that makes sense. So I want to talk about my reactions while reading this book. There's so many moments in this book that were so cringy in like a good way, but a bad way. In I shouldn't be seeing this, but I need to like peek through the blinders kind of thing. It's like a train wreck, but it's so it's like you're it's a little more than a train wreck. It's one of those like super juicy, gossipy moments. Like, you should not be doing those things. I was walking my dog and I was listening to this one scene. And I had to pause because my anticipation for what was happening was to an extreme level of like, I needed to get home and I needed to tell my husband what was happening, because that's how crazy and some of these moments were, as far as like cringy and like, you should not be doing this, but you're doing it, so I want to know what happens. There was definitely some of that in this book. There was definitely like these intense moments. Like I was even texting Fine over on Discord, and I was just like, oh my God, I got to this scene, and I'm just like like cringing, you know? There was definitely a lot of that. If you're into the drama, yes, this book definitely had that. Now, I think the big question is, would I recommend this book? And absolutely, yes, I would. I would definitely recommend this book. I feel like it was very interesting, the way that it held my attention. Like, I read this audiobook in 2 days. Like, I could not stop listening to this audiobook because I was so engrossed in the drama and the intensity and the cringeworthiness of some of those scenes. But even with that, like, not just on the entertainment value, but especially on like how it hit on all those themes, like I already spoke about, like the motherhood and grief and all that, while being very interesting and very dramatic. I feel like the way that it hit those topics was superb. I thought it was great. I really did. I gave this book 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend you guys go check it out if you're into the drama and you need some intense thriller vibes. I would definitely read this book. And pick it up from your local library too. Support your libraries, you know. Like, I've seen this book on the shelves at the library. It's readily available as an audiobook as well. But, you know, if you have the means to go buy the book, I would definitely purchase this book because it was a great read. I had a lot of fun reading this book. If you've read it, I want to know your thoughts, because this book was crazy. This book was intense. I really enjoyed this book. So I need you guys to tell me what your thoughts are. Or even if you plan on reading this book, I want to hear from you. Like, tell me in the comments. Or plan number 3, if you have any other books that you feel are similar to this one and you want to recommend those to me, I would love to hear about those in the comments as well. So those are my thoughts on this book. I really, 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 really enjoyed this book, and I hope you guys do too. But that's gonna do it for this video. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you give it a like and then subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see a little bit more from me. But that's gonna be it. So I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.